Oh, good boy.
Hello everyone. First of all, I know you've probably just seen the title, but don't worry, he is here and he's doing okay. But we just wanted to do a video to tell you what's been happening.
So the last couple of videos that you saw were actually filmed in September, I think quite early in September, and it is now coming up to the middle of November, so like this is us from the future. We've sort of jumped ahead because we wanted to give you an update on everything that's been going on. We know that we mentioned in the vlogs that we had some bad news, and I think that we're now in a position where we can basically share the last few months for us.
They've honestly been probably some of the hardest months of our lives. It's been really, really difficult. And Rufus has been quite a poorly boy, so there's been a lot going on. So we basically just wanted to do a video dedicated to everything, to give you all the information about what's been happening, because I know a lot of you really care about Rufus.
So way back in August, as some of you may already know, Rufus got a grass seed stuck in his paw. I took Rufus on his morning walk, and at some point this paw has sustained some small strain. And it was when we were on the River Avon and we had to take him to a vet in Evesham to get that sorted and get it removed. And it was at that time that we decided to get a lump on his ear biopsied. He's had it for a while, and previous vets in the past have said it's probably a wart, it's not worth sort of going out your way for, but the next time he's sedated, maybe just get it double checked and just to make sure it's fine.
So we did that. He healed from his paw okay. As you can see, he had to wear the cone of shame. He's actually still got a little bit of a blister on his paw, so he has to just wear a little boot. But the vets have all just said that's just because it's right on his paw where he walks, so they just take a long time to heal. But the grass seed was no bother. They removed it just fine. And we kind of just didn't expect anything to come back from the results, so we just carried on as normal. We weren't really worried, to be honest. We went down the Gloucester and Sharpness, we had a really great time. Because of flooding, we wanted to rush down to the end of Sharpness so that we'd seen it all in case we had to rush off for flooding. And we were just going to basically take our time, going up the Gloucester and Sharpness, having some chill time, because barbecues to see out the end of summer, and we were really looking forward to it. So while we were right at the end of Sharpness docks, we'd had a great time, we've seen the ship and all of that. We got a phone call from the vets with the test results, and sadly it had come back as a mast cell tumour, which is kind of basically skin cancer for dogs. It was a cancerous tumour and it needed to be removed ASAP.
So honestly, when we heard that on the phone, it felt like a flashbang had gone off. Like, it caught us completely off guard. It really just threw everything up in the air. And the only thing that we could think about was, right, we need to get him to a vet that can do this surgery as soon as possible. We're in the middle of nowhere, but this thing might take a while to recover from. So we just need a base that we can go to and from a vet on a regular basis. So we were searching around really frantically, both of us on our laptops, and we eventually managed to find a marina that was within a short distance of a local vet that had good reviews. And also we wanted to be a bit closer to family as well, because it's always nice to have like a bit of a support network when you're having to go through something like this. So we did eventually find one, and it was about 60 miles away, and we obviously wanted to get the surgery in as soon as possible. So we booked that in as soon as we could, and that gave us about 4 days, I think, to get to the marina in time for his surgery, which is why in the vlogs you've seen us just absolutely bombing it up the River Severn and everything to get there in time. We did end up with sort of like a day leeway, but we just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to get caught behind any lock breakages or anything like that. And every day that we were cruising, we were kind of ringing up as well, saying like, right, we think we can make it like a day early. Are there any cancellations? Can we get in any earlier, just to try and get him in as soon as possible? But we did eventually make it. Mm-hmm. We were already exhausted from having cruised so much before all this started, but we just had to power through because the vet had literally just said like, it needs to be removed now.
So we were so lucky that we managed to find the marina, and we explained the circumstances, and they managed to find us a spot, which we're super grateful for. And also the vets were able to do because it was quite a big surgery that needed to happen. Not all of the local vets can do it, so we were able to find one. We took him in for his kind of pre-op checks, and then it was just a matter of getting settled into the marina and preparing ourselves. We borrowed a car from my mum, thank you so much, which meant that we had a base sorted, we had a car sorted, and we just needed some time to just prepare Rufus for the surgery, basically. On top of all this, while we were waiting for Rufus to go in for his surgery, I sadly lost my granddad, and he was really lovely. I loved my granddad to pieces, so that was a really tough time as well. It all felt like it was hitting us at once, and we were just really upset. We were really down, and it was just such a difficult week.
So just before Rufus's surgery, we decided to give him like a really thorough feel for any additional lumps, because we tried not to look online too much because the vet told us not to, because you're only going to find bad news. But one thing that we did notice was that mast cell tumours will quite often pop up in several different areas. So we kind of combed over Rufus's entire body to try and see if we could find anything else that might be a lump. We actually found 3 other tiny little lumps, and we let the surgeon know just so that she could assess them as he went into his surgery. The big one on his ear was removed, and she did also note that one of the 3 that we'd found also looked like a mast cell tumour, so that was removed as well. The surgery itself was, I think, way more intense than we'd anticipated. We knew it wasn't going to be just a simple, quick thing, but because of the way that cancer works, they have to remove a lot of the tissue around the tumour as well. So at first we thought he might just have a couple of scars, but when he came out of the surgery, it was really quite heartbreaking. The surgeon had done an incredible job, but Rufus doesn't know what's happening. He just goes into the vet and then comes out, and all of a sudden he's just got all these wounds. And I think for the next sort of week or so of trying to get him through that recovery, it was so difficult.
It's okay. You're home now. It's okay, baby boy.
He was in quite a lot of pain, even on high pain meds. We had to sleep in shifts to make sure that he wasn't even though he had the cone on, he just constantly was frantically trying to get at it, because he had to have a drain in, because it was just constantly leaking fluid and blood. We won't put any pictures of the day of the surgery because it was quite graphic, but there was blood everywhere. It was really quite intense. And that recovery took so much longer than we expected as well, because of how intense the surgery was.
Yeah, it was just so difficult, and our hearts were just breaking because Rufus was just so not himself. He just seemed so depressed. He didn't want to play. He'd only sort of eat a bit of his food. He just wasn't himself at all.
He had to have the cone on for so much longer, on top of having it on for the paw. But because it was such a big operation, they said it wasn't worth risking him not having one of the traditional plastic cones. So it really did make him quite down. There's more to come. I'd say that recovery was harder than his bigger operation that he had later on, because of how
awkward it
was and how bloody it was. It was difficult. So they removed the 2 lumps and they sent them off to testing, but it was told that there was going to be about 2 weeks for the results of these. So that was quite agonising, because it was basically determining how high of a grade they were and the likelihood of whether it would have spread to other organs, which kind of would have determined his lifespan. So it was just such a difficult 2 weeks waiting for those results back.
Yeah, his recovery did start to improve as well. We eventually had the drain taken out, so there was less kind of blood and fluids kind of leaking around, and Rufus slowly started to come back into himself a bit more. And it was around that time when he was sort of feeling a bit better.
You were a good boy. You were a good little boy.
That we thought, right, my birthday's in the middle of all of this. We've got a bit of time before your granddad's funeral, so let's just try and have one day of just turning everything off and just trying to enjoy it.
Happy birthday!
typically that was the day that we got the phone call to tell us what the results were of the tumours that had been removed, and felt like a second flashbang because they said actually his ear one, that was the obvious one,
The bigger lump of the two,
looked okay, but the tiny one that we'd found a couple of days before on his thigh was actually high grade, and that was really bad, and that it needed to go off for further testing so that they could be sure of quite how bad it was.
So because of it coming back high grade, the vets were pretty sure that it would have needed chemotherapy either way. So at this point we had to plan for the next 3 months. We had to basically beg the marina, because it was coming up to winter mooring season. They were already fully booked pretty much, and we had to basically say, can we stay a bit longer? We don't actually know how long. And it was we were quite difficult, and they were so lovely, especially Sarah. Thank you so much, Sarah. She was like, yep, we can book you in on like a rolling thing, so if you need a month we can always extend it. If you only need a month, you can be gone, hopefully, because she knew how eager we were to get back out cruising. So we were waiting for the results of kind of exactly how bad this bad tumour was, whilst trying to plan the marina. And then it was also my granddad's funeral, which was really tough, but it was actually quite nice as well to be able to spend time with my family. I've got a big extended family. We all came together. We all celebrated him and for the great man that he was, and it was quite a nice day, given the circumstances. So yeah, love to my granddad, love to my family. That was also really tough in the middle of everything else.
So after about a week, we got the second set of results back, and that confirmed that he was going to need more intervention, and we got referred to a specialist that was about sort of an hour away, and they deal with sort of like cancer in pets quite regularly, so that's like their whole thing. And they basically confirmed that yeah, we needed to do a sort of considerable course of chemo with Rufus, and they also offered us like ultrasound scans and CT scans as a way of just sort of checking his insides and everything. They did warn us that obviously this comes with a substantial extra cost, but at the end of the day you don't know with cancer whether it's going to have spread anywhere else, so it's advised, but they understood that, you know, it is expensive. And we thought, given that everything that we've been through, and given the fact that we'd already found one on his ear and one on his thigh, we should just do it. So we opted in, and we booked in an appointment to go take him to the specialists.
The specialists were great. They were so lovely, and it felt really serious because like usually when you go to like a vet's, you're in and out within like 15 minutes. But this one, we were like sat down with the vet for like half an hour, talking us through everything. We had a tea and a coffee. They offered tea and coffee. It was just it was quite a sad experience because everyone else's pets that were there were also very poorly. It was already quite hard, but at that moment it kind of really hit us just quite how serious it was, because we'd kind of been running on adrenaline.
Yeah.
So Rufus went in for the day, and we had to leave him there, and they were going to do a lot of extensive testing, scans. So about 2 hours into that day, we weren't expecting a phone call, but we got one, which we kind of knew wasn't a good sign. And the vet basically said that they'd found a mass on Rufus's kidney, which was not a good sign. We didn't know whether this was the original cancer spreading or a new cancer. So at that point he said, do you want to opt in for more tests to investigate this mass on his kidney? And obviously we said yes.
So then it was another half day of just anxious waiting, wondering what on earth this new thing was that they'd found, and eventually we got the phone call to go back to them. So we headed back. We were really panicking at this point, I think, because we were just so low on energy, and every time we got a phone call it was just really bad news. So we were expecting the worst. We got sat down with a specialist, and basically we were told that Rufus might have a second separate type of cancer in his kidney that was completely unrelated to the mast cell tumours that were on his skin. And it was the kind of severity where they said the mast cell tumours are now like a much lower priority. Like, this thing on his kidney is really concerning. We need to sort this as soon as possible, and then we'll go back and worry about the other cancer once we've sort of sorted this one. So again, we were just completely, everything was just thrown up in the air. We didn't know where we stood. It was just another round of wondering whether Rufus was going to die. And we had to book in an appointment for a surgery for them to remove his kidney with this sort of giant growth on it.
They basically said they were pretty sure it was cancer, but they weren't able to say for sure until they had cut the kidney out and sent it off for testing. But basically they said, if it is cancer and we don't remove it, he's got months to live. So we went ahead and removed the kidney. And we were warned that this was quite a big surgery. There were risks involved. They had to have blood ready in case he needed an emergency transfusion. We were just scared at this point. We booked into a hotel nearby in case we had to emergency rush over there in case something went wrong. And we were kind of preparing to say bye.
Yeah.
It was really difficult.
Yeah. So we knew that after his surgery, because it was so serious, he was going to have to be hospitalised for the night. So if anything was to go wrong and we needed to come and say our goodbyes, we wanted to make sure we were as close as possible. So that's why we got a hotel. It wasn't a particularly pleasant night's stay in the hotel. We were just worried and anxious, and to be honest, like most of the days that whole week we were just crying because we just didn't know if at any point we were just going to get told that, you know, we've got to make a decision as to whether we let him go or not.
Just dropped Rufus off for his big operation. I'm so stressed and so run down, my voice is gone. Amy's sick as well. They were really lovely. It's just seeing his little face being all scared.
Rufus's surgeon, Callum, was absolutely amazing though. He was so reassuring. He called us after the surgery. Thank God it was about 6 at night and we dropped him off at like 9 that morning. So it was a long day of waiting and it was a big surgery. And he was okay. The surgery was successful. They didn't need to use the emergency blood transfusion. And we were hopefully going to be able to take him home the following morning.
So we stayed the night in the hotel. Our spirits were a little bit lifted, I think. And we thought, you know, right, we're finally back on track.
To Rufus.
Then we got another phone call, and basically they were concerned with how his other kidney was coping, because obviously it's quite a risky surgery to remove a kidney, but because you've got 2 of them, you can survive with just 1. But the problem is that based on the tests that they were doing throughout the night, it looked like Rufus's remaining kidney wasn't working properly, and apparently with kidneys you can't really tell how good just one of them is until it's just one of them sort of in the body. So even though everything seemed fine on the scans, something obviously wasn't right, and they were going to need to hospitalise him for a whole extra 24 hours at least.
We're back at the boat without Rufus and we're feeling really rubbish about it.
I was on such a high yesterday after he survived his surgery and it all seemed fine. And then we got a call today and it looks like his remaining kidney isn't doing what it should be doing. I don't know, it's really hard to stay positive because we're just so fed up of getting phone calls where it's like, oh yeah, it's nearly good news, but instead actually it's quite bad news.
The vet was trying, you could tell he was being really nice and he was saying like, let's see how it goes. But like, obviously we can't stop thinking about like, well, what if his kidney just doesn't start working again?
The main thing obviously is Rufus, but it's kind of hard to ignore the cost of vet bills as well, and they are really ramping up to a point where like we're looking at bank loans and stuff now because we're gonna run out of money.
Right now we're just feeling rubbish.
Yep.
So they were doing blood tests in the morning and the evening, and basically I think it was testing for toxin levels to see whether his kidney was filtering his blood, and every time they did a test the toxin levels was rising, which basically means his kidney wasn't not just working well, it just wasn't doing anything. It was basically failing. So again we were like, well, he can't survive with no kidneys. Really stressed, really panicky, and they weren't able to release him from hospital until they knew what was happening with that kidney, because he had to be on fluids to kind of keep him alive whilst his kidney was not working well. And this ended up going on for 3 days.
And again, like, it just felt like torture, because it was like we just didn't know if at any point we were going to get a phone call to say, come and say goodbye, basically. It was so stressful, and we were already like just so low on energy, and in the back of your mind as well, like, the costs of everything just goes up and up and up. Like, every time he gets a surgery, every time he gets a test, like an extra 24 hours in a hospital, it just really racks up. So we were really, really struggling at this point. I think it was pretty rare to have a day where we didn't both cry at some point.
So our surgeon Callum called us twice a day, every time he did a blood test, and gave us updates. And on the third day, the toxin levels had gone down, which was a super good sign, because it basically confirmed his kidney wasn't in failure. So he was basically able to come home from hospital. Where are we going?
We're gonna go get our baby boy. Go, go, go.
So after 3 painfully long, excruciating days of his kidney levels not working and working, he is coming home. We had quite a risky week where basically Callum was saying, if we keep him in, he's going to be stressed, and that could be causing it to be worse. He's probably better off less stressed at home, giving his kidney the best chance to kind of manage on its own. So we did that. We brought him home. Welcome home.
You did it, buddy.
Oh, I'm so glad he's home.
We've missed him.
That week was basically, if he suddenly goes downhill, you need to bring him back, and it just shows something isn't right.
So we were just watching him like a hawk that whole time. Like, we were trying our best not to obsess about how much he was eating, how much he was drinking, how much he was weighing. And again, Callum was great, because we would just sort of, he'd call and ask how he was getting on. We'd sort of relay everything back to him, and he'd tell us like this way or that. And it all seemed to be going okay. I think we had to have him at home for a week to then see if his kidney was sort of settling back again.
And Rufus was such a little fighter. He was so brave. Obviously, he was still in quite a lot of pain from his kidney removal itself and had loads of bruises. But you could just tell how relieved he was to be home. And he was in such good spirits.
So after a week, we then took him back to the referral vet for his blood tests. And finally, we got some good news that his kidney wasn't failing.
He's in the clear.
This sleepy boy. He's had some sedatives so they could do some bloods. Let's go.
And they said that he probably doesn't have kidney disease. It looks like it's working just fine now, and it was probably just the trauma from the surgery that had kind of caused it to struggle for a bit. But we were just so relieved to have that final confirmation that his kidney wasn't going to fail and he wasn't going to die from that.
So we basically said bye to the referral vets. Hope we never have to see you again in the nicest possible way.
Rufus is going to go say thank you for everyone looking after him.
Yeah, he's been signed off this morning, we think. So
Yeah.
hopefully we won't be back. And yeah, he's been home ever since. We're so pleased with how he's recovering. I can't believe everything he's been through. He's such a fighter. Like, the surgery on his ear and his kidney removal and his lump on his thigh and the amount of blood tests he's had to have and just the stays in hospital. He's been so brave, and we're just so glad that he's home. He's pretty much back to normal now. He can go on walks and he's his happy little self. And it's just, we're just so pleased that he's still here with us today, and he's doing really, really well.
So he's absolutely fine now, and it's really weird to think that without him getting a grass seed stuck in his paw in August, he probably would have died, because with stuff like kidney cancer, you're not just going to randomly take your dog in for a CT scan because it costs thousands. So by the time you see the symptoms, a lot of the time it could be too late. And we only found the kidney cancer because he had a mast cell tumour, which we also thought was fine. And the only reason that he got the mast cell tumour checked out was because of the grass seed. So in a weird way, the grass seed really did save his life.
And we're very grateful for it, aren't we?
Yeah.
So, what's next? It's not all good news, and we're still kind of coming to terms with this, but I think we're just so relieved that he's here now. We're just grateful for anything. But basically, the next steps are that they've said Rufus is, it seems like, unfortunately, is just one of those dogs that is just prone to cancer. Because he's had 2 quite serious cancers at the same time, his likelihood of it reoccurring is quite high.
And also because of the one on his thigh was high grade, that increases the chances of it coming back. And even though we put that to one side when we sorted out his kidney cancer, that is still an ongoing issue. So he needs a year's worth of chemotherapy, which is basically what we're kind of bracing ourselves for now and trying to figure out how all that's going to work.
It's not invasive chemotherapy because it's just a tablet that he takes 3 times a week over the course of a year. So he should be able to live life relatively normally, but for the first few months... See ya. But for the first few months of him having to take that, they basically have to do quite a lot of tests to make sure his body's responding to it well, which is why the plan is for us to stay in the marina until January. That'll give him a couple of months to make sure that long term he's going to be okay on these tablets.
So anyone who's had any experience with cancer, you probably already know how unforgiving it can be. So even though he's been through so much and he's been a real trooper and he's got through it all, realistically his life expectation is still anywhere from up to a year to up to 4 years. So we don't know what the future holds for him. We hope that he responds well to this treatment and he can live out another good 4 years of running around on the towpath and being a little nuisance and crying all the time, but we've just got to play it by ear now. All we know for sure is that if we hadn't have done anything and we hadn't have caught it and hadn't gone through all these surgeries, then his life expectancy would have been weeks and maximum months. So we're just trying to be grateful for that, really.
We're hoping we can go out cruising pretty much back to normal after that. We're probably just going to have to have cars fairly often, nip him to the vets to get checks out for blood tests. But hopefully we should be able to go pretty much back to normal within a few months.
Yeah, this marina has been absolutely incredible, and I think we couldn't have gotten lucky in picking a better one. It's been amazing, and the vets as well have been so nice. But you know us, like, cruising is kind of like a core part of us, and we really miss it. We can't wait to go back out on a little cruise again. But right now Rufus just needs quiet, he needs rest, and that's...
We do as well.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do.
We acknowledge that the last few videos might have been a little bit confusing and not knowing what was happening, but I'm sure now, knowing all the information, you can appreciate we didn't know what was happening ourselves. It was so stressful. We just needed to take that time off and deal with it, and then we wanted to come at you when we had all the information, basically. So thank you for listening to this explanation, and just wanted to say a massive thank you to all the support from all of you. Our patrons have been super supportive, and in the comments on the last video, all of you have been just so amazing. Honestly, we're just so grateful for all of the kind words. We've been reading them all across Facebook, Instagram, YouTube comments. We might not always be able to reply to them all, but just know that we have been reading them all, and we really do appreciate them.
So in terms of the vlogs, obviously this is us from the future. We didn't film a huge amount while all this was going on, obviously, because our calendar was literally just vet. And I'm sure you can appreciate that. We did film a little bit to try and show sort of like a day in the life as we were going through this, so I think that will probably be the next vlog. Video. And even though we're not cruising at the moment, we've still got plenty of exciting videos. We're still planning on doing our sort of 2 a week. And we've got, some really cool things in the process. We've got something exciting for December. So you've got something to look forward to as well. So yeah, the next video will probably be like a little bit more of like a solemn mood, I think, because that's just sort of showing...
It's what we filmed whilst in the middle of it all.
Yeah.
And then hopefully we'll be able to get back to them not being so miserable all the time.
Yeah, but honestly, thank you so much for just sticking it through with us. And yeah, just all the wonderful support. You genuinely don't know how much that means to us.
So I'm sure you'll all agree Rufus has earned a little treat, and we've been saving this sausage for us to film this video so he can have a treat for being such a brave boy.
Oh. He absolutely loves these. He picked them out from a shop himself. We've been saving it. Oh, yummy, yummy. Oh, yeah. You good boy.
Oh, he's so brave.
He's such a brave boy.
And Rufus says thank you for all the love as well.